In this tutorial, we are going to learn about classes and objects. This is a really exciting moment because being able to use classes and objects in your program means that you are starting to learn the foundation of object-oriented programming. As a way to learn classes and objects, we are going to try to replicate a simple version of the Frogger, which is a game made in 1981, 40 years ago by Konami. In this game, you are a frog and you start from the bottom of the screen, and you have to pass through the road and not getting hit by the car, and also pass the river with the help of the turtles actually, and go home, which is at the top of the screen. So let's get started by beginning to use classes and objects to program the first portion of the game where the cars are moving. A class in JavaScript, in object-oriented programming, is a way to create a blueprint. So if we look at the different kinds of cars here, you can see that there are cars that are moving at different speed. The cars have different color. They have different sizes. They also have different spacing in between them, right? But nevertheless, all of them embody a similar quality. Which is if the frog collides with the class or with the car, the frog is going to lose a life, right? And also, all of the cars move on the x-axis. So they all move horizontally. Some move left and some move right. So we can think about creating a blueprint, the class car now, with those commonalities in mind, right? And later on, we can once these cards are turned into individual objects, which are these individual instances of the blueprint car, we can then further specify how each of them should behave. So notice here that when you write the class car or class, anything, you name it, inside of your program, you do not add a parenthesis after the car, right? So unlike function, we actually don't have to pass any values into the car or into the class. The class itself, you can think about this as almost like a mega template that it doesn't take any additional external values. Also, when you are declaring a class, usually you capitalize the first letter of the name. So that's just a convention when you're writing classes. And secondly, every class in JavaScript has a constructor. And a constructor, and this is, the format here is very similar to a function, right? So you write down constructor, and it's followed by a parenthesis that, hint you can pass numbers into, and followed by a opening and closing curly bracket here. By inserting this constructor method, and again, so many words, but we can think about it as a function. It really works very similar to a function, except when it's inside of a class, we call it a method. So when we create a constructor inside of a class, we give the class the ability to create and initialize the car object later on. And inside of that constructor is where we declare all the different variables we want this car blueprint, car template to inhabit. Okay, so that was a ton of information. Let's actually go into the P5 editor and begin typing. So here is my P5 editor. And I am going to write class car. And I'm gonna write it at the bottom after draw. So opening curly bracket, closing curly bracket, and the first thing I am going to write is a constructor, and followed by a set of parentheses and a set of curly bracket. So this is a special method that every class in JavaScript has, so that you can define the variables for this class, and also be able to create an object of the car, right? That creates the car object. So great. Let's add some variables in here. So let's just to get things started off with, I'm gonna give this car a X and a Y. So every single car is going to have an X position and a Y position. Fair enough. Inside of the context of a class, when you are declaring a variable, this is where the alien language comes in. You have to write it in this really weird way. So usually we're just gonna say let X equals to 200, let Y equals to 200, right? And just get it over with. But no, this is not going to really work when it comes to assigning variables to this car object. What we want to write here actually is this dot X. So this dot X equals to 200. This dot Y equals to 200. And so on and so forth. Whenever you create new variables inside of your class that you want to essentially be able to package into the template of this blueprint, you have to state it out this way. This dot variable name. Okay, so let's actually return to our slide here for a second, and just reflect back on what we just did. So what we just used, this dot car X, this word is called the this keyword in JavaScript. And what is it doing? What it's doing is that it is, when you write the word this inside a class, it is referring to the owner object. And I know this actually sounds really, really confusing right now, but an easier way to say it is that this word this is trying to say that, hey, this car X belongs to the class, belongs to this class blueprint, and specifically belongs to, the object it's going to sort of get populated and pop out in the world. It doesn't belong to anyone else but this car, right? So it's confusing at the moment. Hopefully that will kind of ease out once you start seeing different ways to kind of apply this. But also, why does it need to refer to itself? Why is it self-referential? That will hopefully also kind of get cleared out in a bit. So all we need to know now is just that the word this is referring to its owner, referring to the object that encapsulates all of these variables, this dot X and this dot Y. And we are also using the dot operator here, right? So this dot, so many new things. So the dot operator lets us navigate the directory of your program to locate something specific, right? So think about the dot operator this way. Let's do a thought experiment. If I am to, reference a address in my program, right? I might write something like this. I might write USA dot New York dot Manhattan dot 16th Street dot 66, which is the number of the building. This is actually the building of design technology. Okay, so So cool. The dot, this is the meaning of the dot. It lets you go one layer deeper from the broader scope and kind of get more and more and more specific. Similar to how the forward slashes in a URL works, right? So when you go to any given website, it's going to have forward slash and get into like a submenu, such and such. So that's how you can understand the dot operator. So great, let's continue back to our P5 editor here. So now we kind of got an overview of this keyword and the dot operator. And what we are going to do now is actually bring this object into the world. And that is very exciting. I'm gonna go to the top of my program and write let car1. You know, customized, totally arbitrary name. So a variable that is going to contain this car object that I'm about to bring to the world. So here, usually you would bring your car object into the world in your setup. So the syntax here is car1 dot, oh sorry, car1 equal to new car, followed by a set of parentheses here. Okay, so now if we console.log car1 and hit play, we're seeing our car object contained inside of car1 variable born into the world. So here, this is what we got, right? So this is a car object with its specific variables. And in fact, there is a terminology for this called the members variable. You know, something to know about. Don't worry too much about it if the terminology is frustrating. Just know that what we're seeing here now inside of our console is a car object that has a X position of 200 and a Y position of 200, exactly as intended. Okay, so returning back to our slide here, we have used a new thing, and it's called the new operator, right? So what is it? What the new operator does, that word new, what it does is that it instantiates, and that word is very wordy, it instantiates a new object. The constructor creates the object, the new operator instantiates the object, meaning, you know, bringing it to the world, you know, like basically create, you know, making it, actually placing it into the world, right? So what we see is that it lives inside of function setup most of the time, unless you know, if you put it inside a function draw, you're gonna create a new object every single frame, which is actually gonna be pretty taxing to the program. I don't think, most of the time you don't want to. Occasionally you want to do that, but most of the time you don't want to do that. Okay, so most of the time you want to instantiate a new object in the setup. And the basic syntax is you know, declare the global variable, take that variable and assign the new object to it, right? And there is a parenthesis afterward, right? So that's indicating something. What that's indicating is that there are parameters that can be passed into the constructor argument if needed. right? So that is actually really similar to our experience with functions, right? It working a very similar way. So here I am going to try to pass some numbers in. And just like function, we need to declare variables inside of that little portal, that little parenthesis there. So I'm gonna write a x and a y variable, and I can here replace my number into x, replace my number into y, and I can now, pass numbers from this new car parenthesis into my constructor method. So here I can say 200, 200, 200, right? Oh, I should have deleted that. Console.log car1 and hit play. And you'll see that we're gonna get the same kind of result. Same idea, right? So cool. That is all fine. Let's now actually work on the next step, which is now we have a card object. It's got member variables, but we are not using them in any way, right? Therefore, we're not going to see anything on the screen. So what we gotta do right now is adding additional methods. so like customized methods, which are just like function. And think about this as features that you want to add to your car blueprint, right? What are some important foundational essential features that every single one of your car object needs to have? And I got an idea, which is the car needs to have a body, right? So I'm going to name and create a body method. So notice that you have to declare your constructor method first, and then you can declare your own methods. You make as many as you want, but once you declare the constructor methods, you can actually begin using these member variable inside of your own method. So here I'm going to draw a rectangle. Every single car blueprint, no matter what kind of car, is going to be in the shape of a rectangle. Okay, cool. So here, notice that when we're referencing the x member variable, we have to write this dot x, comma, this dot y. And we can give it, a random size. So I'm going to say 50, 35. Okay, so that's all nice and fine. When I hit play, I'm going to get a still an object, and it's not being displayed inside of my draw, right? So in order for me to display this customized method of a car object, what I gotta do actually is going to draw and write car1 dot body and parenthesis. And when I hit play, beautiful, that is my car right there. So here, notice we're using the dot notation again, right? So this line essentially is saying that, hey, go to car1, this car object, and find its feature, the body feature, and load whatever is inside of that method into my draw function. Okay, so that is basically the basics of creating your first class and object. That was a lot. You have learned a lot of new syntax. And so the next portion, the next step of this setup tutorial, we are going to learn about how you combine objects and array and for loop to create an array of objects. So that will be the whole point of using a class, so that you can create many different objects that can all operate individually.